All right. Good morning, everyone. So this is our second session as the book club, and we're reading the Bhagavad-Gita by George Feuerstein. Feuerstein. It's so hard to pronounce the last name, but yeah, so last time I don't know if all of you were here in the last session, but last time we talked about the other book, the book by Swami Chinmayananda, and we had some issues with that one, so we've shifted to this book, and we've had a few pages of reading for today, and so without further ado, let's get started. So the rules of engagement is basically that if you have something to say, please raise your hand, and then we can talk about it. But let me go first. I I'm actually really glad that we shifted to this book because like I had a really good time reading the few pages that we did for today's session, and this one was like not colored with that sort of like you know like painting your own perspective as being that of the Gita. That I really appreciated. He qualified his opinion saying that I personally believe, or I think that this that I condone as a pacifist this that. So he was like making sure to like even in the preface he was making sure that he was talking about his own perspective, and then as we moved on there was a lot of detail in terms of like the veracity of the various facts and the date time these things. Um, so all of these things I really appreciated, and also I think last time we spoke about the relevance of Mahabharata in understanding the Gita, and and I think that even in the few pages that we just read, I think he went over the essential aspects of the relationship between the Gita and Mahabharata, and it was I personally felt it was really very this is the right book, at least for me. And yeah, I would love to hear other people's opinions as well.
Hi Raghav, I would like to go next
Yeah.
on the same lines that you said. So, most of the Bhagavad Gita books, when we pick up, it directly starts with the Bhagavad Gita part.
Mhm.
So, like we have known Mahabharata since childhood and lot of things, but this book has presented everything in a very logical and systematic format. So, like while I was reading about, let's say, Draupadi or Kunti, so some of the facts when I read in this book, it's like, no, 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 what is this author saying? I think there is some confusion, and then I googled up, and then I found, okay, what is he trying to say? I just read the same statement with a different background, so I was
Mhm.
understanding it wrong. So, giving all the introduction to the characters, it might be a revision, and but at times it might be an enhancement to the existing knowledge, and that's a very good way to start reading Bhagavad Gita, so that you don't come from any biases or ignorance when you start reading the Bhagavad Gita. Actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad. No, it wasn't just me who had like a good impression of this book. At least to start with, we haven't really gone very deep into it, but at least a good start. Did everybody get a chance to read the book? Actually, read the pages. Prince, Sandeep, Shruti, Ankit.
Yeah, good morning, Raghav.
Yeah. Good morning.
So I would agree with both of you, and I would like to add that the fact that it dedicated about 75 pages even before getting into Gita, right?
Hmm.
So I wasn't actually expecting this much of backdrop history going. I mean, I was actually initially impressed with the when I was started reading the part one, and then there are like 9 chapters
Hmm.
per se if you have to. So I just started reading them, and then I'm very glad because as I mentioned in the previous last week's call, do someone have to have knowledge of
Yeah.
Mahabharata itself? I mean, even after reading these 75 pages, I am not totally getting entire. I don't
Hmm.
obviously, it's not entirety of Mahabharata, but at least the author did a genuine, critical approach towards something that at least if you want to read Bhagavad Gita, what should be the backdrop? At least you should know some, critical stages, history, and then some characters. And he also defined every character that has, some mention in the Gita, and he has for every character he has given the historical backdrop for every character and their names, and even there are like some little stories about Bhima, and at the bottom of the lake. Obviously, no, I don't think any other book would do the same justification to all these little stories, showing that showing he's showing what a character actually is, right? He's giving a little bit of context. What are these characters? So I'm very happy to kept reading. So actually, I read about 100 pages of it, right? I even jumped into part 2 as well. So yeah,
I think
I'm very happy about this.
Yeah, I think you jumped ahead. I mean, I at least I didn't read as far as that. I only read like the prescribed pages. I think till 26 or something.
Yeah.
And actually, that is something that I want to discuss down the line as to how we proceed with the reading for the next, I guess, like the next sessions. Because I think somebody else raised this question of we have like these many pages, and if you do at the 10 pages per week, you're not going to finish it until like a year or something. And that's a good point. And I think that when we look at the initiative, the larger initiative of the book club, I think it makes sense for us to quickly cycle through books, and through a year we'll read like a certain number of books. So we'll talk about all of those things at the end.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing those points,
Yeah.
Sandeep.
Thank you.
And Prince and Shruti, you guys have anything?
Yeah, this is Shruti here,
Yeah.
and I'm completely new to this kind of reading habits. My interest towards this was because I'm a classical dancer, and I used to play some snippets of the epitomes like Mahabharata, Ramayana in my dances. But then I had a thought in me that I should start reading Gita. So that is the
Shruti,
reason I
do a small favor? Can you bring the mic closer? I think we're not able to hear you properly.
just a minute. Yeah, now am I clear?
Yeah, it's better, a little bit better. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I am very new to this and I don't have any prior experience of reading books like this. But I am a classical dancer where I have done this character in my dance, be it Mahabharata and Ramayana. I have did this in my dance. So I had an inner thought that I should somewhere start learning Gita and to get those nuances in that. So this is my very first class and I haven't attended the previous class also. So I don't know the book which you are referring to, but if you can help me with the name of the book, I could purchase that and I could join you through the journey.
Yeah. So are you part of that Bhagavad-Gita WhatsApp group that we have?
No, I'm not
Okay,
still a
you
part.
joined from the meetup, is it?
Yeah, I joined from meetup.
Yeah, in the meetup event itself, we've listed the book as well as the pages that we were supposed to read for today. Maybe you haven't looked at it, but yeah, we can like I think if you join the WhatsApp group, it'll be like much more convenient.
Yeah,
so
sure,
I'll send you
sure.
the link in the chat. You can just go there and then join the WhatsApp group from there. Okay.
Yes, I'll join it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Prince, I think you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah. So as everyone already mentioned, this book was particularly more trustworthy or realistic for me because I'll name some instances where the author, whenever he had to give some personal opinions or he wanted to point to some specific nuances, he specifically quoted uh, the words of Sri Aurobindo at, I guess, two or three instances. And I guess it is already talked about, but um, I guess it was in the first chapter of Mahabharata where we know that Mahabharata is a huge text and it's very difficult to kind of summarize it in let's say 4 or 5 pages. But the author has done a really great job where he has kind of gave a summary of each of the parv or let's say chapters of Mahabharata, and it's like a great summary for someone who's not read Mahabharata or has almost no idea of Mahabharata. It's like a great summary for us to make sure that the whole dialectics of Gita makes sense to, I guess, each and every one of us. So yeah, it was great to see that wherever he was putting opinions, he was using the word "I believe so" and I think so. Or he was quoting other philosophers like Aurobindo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Raghu.
Ankit, did you have a chance to read it? Or I think you were asking for the book, right? So you may not have read it.
This version, like I was going through the last book. I just
Okay. So yeah, okay. We'll discuss that in the WhatsApp group after this call. So I want to like establish something here. First of all, I think we need to like discuss the format of this session, like how we're going to do things. So I think the way that my proposal is that like at the opening we'll just like share like a brief like general impression of reading those pages that we just read. So for every session, when we join the call, like we'll just like discuss our first impressions or the overall impressions of reading those pages, and then we'll go into like specifics. Maybe like I want each of you to like note down the things as you're reading it, right? If something comes to your mind that you would like to discuss with others, just like note it down somewhere, so that like when we come to this call, like we'll have a list of things to talk about. I think that's the best way to like do these like book discussions. So I have a few things that I've listed out as things that I want to discuss, and maybe I can share some of those, and then like if you in the meantime, like if you have something in your mind, you can also like note down, and you can take your turn to discuss those. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is the dating of events. So first of all, even before that, actually there is another aspect, which is, did it even happen? There is a question of, is this even real, or is this like completely fictitious, or is it a mix of the two? And it's a wonderful thing that George goes through that aspect as well, and he discusses that, and he talks about the various sources of like evidence for various historical events that are depicted in the Mahabharata, and he's sort of like given a list of like a contextual overview of the various speculations that exist for the Mahabharata war, as well as the other events that are depicted in the Gita. So, and also the geographical areas in which these things happened. He's talked about all of these things, and that was really useful. But it really boggles my mind that for one thing, this is like extremely detailed. This account of like the 18 books and the millions of stanzas, it's insane. Like the volume of material is on its own merit, it's like insane. And you can imagine the amount of detail that goes into all of these verses and everything. And you have to, if this was not real, then this must be the imagination of the mind of somebody who's like superhumanly brilliant. But if it was real, then that seems even more insane, because like of the nature of the things that are depicted. So in my mind, it seems like it must be a mix of fact and fiction. Some of these things may be real, and then some of these are derived, and I believe that majority of it must be fictional. This is my impression. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this part, the whether it is like fact or fiction. What do you guys think about this?
Raghav, I was watching one documentary a couple of years back, and there is a place called Sinoli, which is approximately in today's Uttar Pradesh. An archaeological survey department has found ruins of a chariot-like structure there. And via dating, they have found it to be approximately from the time of Mahabharata era. Sorry, I don't remember the dates that they have quoted in the documentary, and this fact just came to my mind when you put up the question. So there are now evidences that approximately date. So I tend to agree with your thought process, because for a lot of long years it was a verbal thing that was being passed. It was not documented in written. So it is bound to get fictitious with time as it passes on verbally. But there has to be some evidence of fact to it, and not completely a fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. What do others think?
So there, see, we always have to, we can hypothesize it and we can speculate and conjecture. But again, it is a part of the, storytelling, right? So there could be some truth to it, and there are some evidences, archaeological evidences of the city of Dwarka underwater, and then also multiple instances of Krishna being mentioned in cross-cultural, how you say, historical events. So it could be true. Maybe like some instances, like maybe the king, the Krishna itself, the king as a king might have existed, right? But it not necessarily mean that the war itself have happened in this scale, or maybe like the powers they have mentioned in the Mahabharata or like in the Gita might not, maybe or maybe not have existed. But we can only go with the archaeological evidence that some there is some facts to this, but especially the existence of the person who is named Krishna, who is supposed to be a king and a powerful person. I do believe that is very high chance of close to the truth. But rest of the things is here, actually is the incarnation of God and all this,
mystical elements.
let's say, yeah, mythological, theological, or even I would say something like, just like directors have a cinematic freedom, the poets or who framed all these poems or the literature have their own freedom of expression in their own way to make the story more glorious and engaging. So that's what I believe.
But even there, right? Like, I mean, I did mention that it could be fictitious, and it's most likely fictitious, these things. But even there, like the amount of detail that exists, right? It is
Yes.
it is like astounding.
Yeah.
Regardless of
Exactly.
whether it was real or not, the fact that it exists is astounding. And it kind
Yes.
of like defies modern expectations that we have of like what a work of fiction ought to be, or even like what a historical account ought to be. And that's something that I'm really glad that I'm actually reading this book out now, because like my impression of this whole thing was like very vague, and I just didn't care much about it. But now I'm like very engaged into this. And like even if it was fictitious, just imagine the amount of like length you have to go to sort of avoid inconsistencies and plot loopholes in the plot, if you will.
Yeah.
This is like I'm still yet to like actually fully appreciate the consistency or the integrity of the whole plot and the narrative. Obviously that's something that you can only evaluate if you go through the original, I guess, like Sanskrit version of things. Even that was like penned down at a certain point, right? It was before that it was still like passed verbally, I think. I'm not even sure, actually. I don't know much about like how it was. The origins are like kind of like very mysterious, for even the best of us, I think, because like nobody was there to think about it in the terms that we do today. Like today's standards of like evaluation of anything is very different from what it has been. So I'm pretty sure some of it must be lost when, but if it is like preserved to a very extreme high degree of fidelity, then that would be very impressive. And I would love to know if it is actually as consistent as it has been portrayed, because from whatever I've heard from others, it seems like this is a brilliant piece of work that is like very consistent and intricately detailed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the author himself, I think, I don't remember the exact chapter or page number. He himself quoted that it is the most syncretic, production that ever existed on the earth, something like that,
Mm.
Yeah. And he also multiple instances compared it to the, Eliot and Shakespeare's of the West. I mean, he wasn't saying that it is like comparable. He's just saying if Shakespeare is like the pinnacle, like which is treated in the West, but it even exceeds some even the so renowned poets of the West.
Okay. I think somebody else wanted to say something.
Yeah. So I personally have not researched much about the historiography of, let's say, Gita or Mahabharata, but from what little I know, the geography, the polity, and the political structure that the Mahabharata talks about mm, kind of correlates with the kingdoms that were present during the Mahajanpata period, whether it is the Kuru clan, whether it is the Virata kingdom down south, and all of the geographical features are kind of correlated with the Mahajanpata period, which established around 6th century BC. And when the author kind of date back the Gita to 200 to 300 century BC, then I guess it kind of makes sense because the whole thing could have happened during Mahajanpada period, and I could be totally wrong here, but I do believe that there was a war like such, but uh, the geographical and political structures or features could be the same. Of course, there were no mystical weapons, there were no gods, but great kings, and uh, I guess it was a war that happened, and you know what court poets and court authors do, to kind of make sure that their king is happy. They extrapolate the fact and the great victories that they have, and maybe something like that happened. And I could be totally wrong here because the chariot at Sinoli found, like Shruti pointed out, or I guess Avantika is like around 2000 BC old. Yeah, Raghu.
Yeah, so the thing about the mystical aspects of it, that was actually the next point that I wanted to talk about. There are a lot of descriptions of things that are considered, I mean, that is like very outlandish. The fact that the entire thing is like the author of the Mahabharata himself is like a character in it, and he's the whole the way in which he actually gets to know about all of these things is through some kind of like a remote like sensing, like he's able to like see things telepathically or something like that. That thing, and also the sort of magical powers that Bhishma has, or like Ashwatthama has, or something like that. These things are obviously, there are two ways of looking at it. One is that you can look at it and say, okay, this is probably the imagination of the people of these times, or their superstitions, or the way they look at the world. Because like today we look at everything in a very tangible way. Like we're all, I mean, like almost embarrassed to consider any other aspect, because like if you openly talk about things that are not empirical and tangible, then you get called out as a kook or something like that. So, but maybe back in the time, that was the norm, to speak about things in a very superstitious way or something like that. But the other way of looking at it is that maybe these things were real and these are lost with time, because as outlandish as that sounds, there is nothing to deny that that is a valid possibility. I mean, at least in my mind, because I'm pretty open with, like, what is possible, what is not possible. Because like I realize that even though we are at a modern time, it is not that we are advanced. Maybe we just have our own limitations of this era that prevents us from like fathoming other things that may be possible. But because of our own limitations, we may not be able to see it. It's possible, and that is how I see the mystical aspects. But one thing to note is that when somebody's embellishing these things, right, it is easy for that to be like for it to have like the kind of like plot holes, like I said. But the other thing is like how specific these descriptions are, right? It makes you wonder, like, this is not some superstitious, like, like people sharing stories of extravagant nature or something like that. These are people who are describing these things in a very scientific way, and it has the consistency that you would expect for a rational person to have, and yet it is so outlandish and so mystical that really throws me off. Like I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the mystical aspects of this whole thing.
Can I start?
Yeah.
I have no. I want to start from the fact versus fiction part.
Mm-hmm.
So so Gita is believed to be like one of the pillars of Vedas, sub branches of Vedas. Only the Gita part, which is called as Prasthantriya. Like to understand, like uh, wait. So like the Vedas were written, and that is considered to be a philosophical book. It's a pure philosophical book, which is which we call as Upanishads. So what I suspect, I'm not sure. What I suspect is those philosophies which were mentioned is in Upanishads were not in mainstream. people couldn't get access to that kind of knowledge, and people don't get involved because there is no kind of story in that. People get interest only when they have some kind of masala in it. So I think people of that era has imbibed that philosophy into that story which they have created, and the story was created in such a way that the scenarios of that era, war used to happen, kingdom used to fight, those scenarios, the replicas of those scenarios have been taken into that story. And also the philosophical part of what Veda, of what Upanishad says, that also uh, mixed with that. So I think it's a combination of fact, fiction, and the philosophy that it carries. And I think the most important part is the philosophy of this.
Okay, so you're saying that they basically like imagined this thing as a way to like pass on the great knowledge of the Upanishads through a medium. They just like created this as a vehicle to sort of like teach to the masses these things. That's
To
how
give an analogy, like there is a demo, like we have a constitution where we say ki we have to maintain equality and everything, these things, liberty. Uh, we should not discriminate among race, caste, sex. So people can read this, but if I create a movie out of it and teach a same philosophy through that movie to masses, I think that kind of thought process may be there in writing that Mahabharata and teaching that kind of philosophy to people of that times. And
No,
they
but
thought,
no, go ahead. Yeah, finish.
no, that's it. I want to say this point only.
Yeah, but even with that, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, this is our logical interpretation of what happens. Like, I mean, because like you have to understand from the perspective of like us as modern people, right? Like, we have certain limitations of logic, and there are
Mhm.
certain things we accept and certain things we deny because like it doesn't seem plausible in our minds. So I think we have to like be cognizant of our own limitations when we like try to imagine what happened there, because like to us, right? It seems this is the logical thing that happened, because like fundamentally I think we have to appreciate the fact that we don't know. But
Mhm.
when we like even project a certain scenario as to what might have happened, right? We only think about like what is possible in our minds, and in our minds it is this is the reality that we are exposed to today. So we are using this to sort of imagine what might have happened over there, but the fact is that we can't be sure. And also like even if you were to consider the possibility of that this was actually like manufactured to sort of as a medium to transfer knowledge through to the general masses. I mean, at the time of the creation of this thing, there was no actually I want to like also talk about whether it was actually orally transmitted and then like written down at a later time, or if it was actually written
So
down.
according to the book, according to the author, it has been orally transmitted initially,
Hmm.
and then it was written down by Vyasa.
Yeah,
Actually, the meaning of the Vyasa is poet, not actually the name of the person himself.
right.
There are like multiple, hundreds of years of, history is there when all these poets have, made this into a contextual, into textual record. And even it is mentioned in the book itself that these texts are considered very, very, limited access, and they are supposed to be within the limits of Brahmins who are. It is literally saying that you should have some kind of a training or a qualification even to act in order to access it. And it also goes out to say that because of the the democratic and secular nation of the world that we live in today, which has happened somewhere between like 17th 18th century, that is when it actually has become mass
Yeah.
distributed to the masses. Before that it was very, very limited in access. That's what the book says. So according to the
Just
book.
to Yes, sir.
Yeah, please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, I do accept that the Bhagavad Gita and, to be honest, all the religious texts were limited to only Brahmins, or let's say someone who had proper teachings and learnings, because this is a time when it was passed down orally, as accepted by Sandeep as well, and these kind of texts were very much dependent on how you pronounce it. I'm not sure if you have seen when the
Yeah,
Brahmins
that is right.
in today also, when they are pronouncing these Vedic texts, they use their hands to make sure that their annotations are correct. They make certain signs. I'm not much aware of what they mean, but I'm told that that is done to help with annotation. And it is clearly seen that it was something which was elite in nature, because the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita is written in Sanskrit, but the local language at that time was Pali and Prakrit of those regions. So it can't be something which was populist as
Yeah,
compared to the Buddhist text.
maybe that was a requirement for them to maintain the fidelity of the reproduction generation after generation. Like, because like when you pass on these things, unless you do it with a certain level of meticulousness, you cannot like maintain the integrity of the text like across generations. So maybe that's why they were very selective with like how they transmitted this. And actually, I've seen other people also talk about like how even yoga was like this. That it was like used to be an exclusive thing, and then it's more of a recent thing that it is spreading throughout the world. But obviously, there is a lot of like distortions even there. But when gurus like teach something to their disciples, they actually have a very elaborate process for the disciples to even be chosen to receive this knowledge. They have like this initiation period, or like they have to wait for 12 years before they even get an opportunity to have the basic initiation into the practice or something. So I think there were the times in the past where it was very the most abundant resource that anybody had was time. So they just made sure that they only allowed the most serious people to actually learn any of these things. um, and the other thing is, but did anybody else have anything to say about uh, what we just talked about?
Yeah, I would like to add something about the mystical nature that you asked
Yeah.
about.
Mhm.
See, I would like to quote this, the chapter 5 of part 1, the Gita's syncretism and the holistic orientation. See, the syncretism, this specific word comes up many times in it. So if I have to just take an example, Bhima could kill, if I'm not wrong, if I remember correctly, Bhima could kill 1,000 elephants with one blow, right?
Mm.
I just would like to translate it to today's age and see, can something, is there a weapon that can kill 1,000 elephants today? Yes, it is. And was there some kind of weapon that could do at the times of Mahabharata? I cannot say yes or no. What I'm trying to say is, if you look at the history of technology, let's say if I have to consider 2,000 years of evolution of technology, and if I have to project what will happen in the next 2,000 years, right? Just like if I would take a science fiction movie like Gravity, or like iRobot. So it is like it is technology that could exist in the future. So it also says the Vyasa could in an instance can go to anywhere in the world. Today we can do that. I mean, like probably physically we may not be able to do that, but you can access information, you can access a lot of things in an instance anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
So it is like, it doesn't mean that it existed at that point. But what I'm trying to say is, whatever let's say if this text was written 2,000 years ago, they know the technology that existed and the limitations that they had at that point, but they could imagine this kind of technology could exist in the future, maybe, right? So if they have some kind of like cannonballs which could kill one or two elephants, why not the technology could progress into such a place that they are defining it as Bhima and creating a character out of it, and just taking their imaginations to the whatever they can at that point, and then also using the of course syncretism also, which is like includes metaphysical, theological, psychological, and ethical teachings into into the beautiful way of storytelling. So that's how I take the mythical aspect of it.
Okay. And another thing I want to note about this mystical aspect of things, right? One thing is, like, if I don't know if you guys are aware of this idea that there is civilization. Human civilization is like a cyclical thing. It goes through like a certain top where it flourishes, and then it goes back, and it like sort of like it goes into this phase of extreme like deprivation, like human depravity is like at the peak, and then it goes back up again to civilization as people build it back up. And that's how things happen. You can actually observe this at a micro scale in terms of civilizations. If you look at like great civilizations that have existed, they go through cycles. Like even the Roman Empire was like going through certain cycles, like of highs and peaks, and the life of that entity depends on whether it is able to withstand those cycles. There are like also like empires that have like completely perished and they don't no longer exist in the identity that they had, because they weren't able to withstand those cycles. So on a broader scale, right, if you look at, maybe the Mahabharata was written 2000 years ago or whatever, but maybe the actual events are much, much, much older, and they were just written in the context of the events that were happening 2000 years ago. But maybe it was happening, like maybe like 50,000 years ago, human civilization was at a much bigger peak than we are today. And maybe there was like ways for human beings to have these supernatural powers, and maybe it is literal, and I'm just like really like I'm letting my imagination run wild with this. Like I'm just thinking like these things are possible, at least in my mind. I'm not like opposed to imagining that it's possible, but I do want to like hear what you guys think. Like, do you think that is absurd, or do you think it could be possible?
I mean, none of us can disprove your assumptions, so there is no reason to call it absurd, because there's no evidence or no facts to, kind of disprove of your claims that you're making. So yeah, maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, because we have to understand one thing. Like, let's say that we spoke to the people 2000 years ago and told them about the internet or about like flights. They would think it's absurd, and they wouldn't know that it's mechanistically possible given certain knowledge, certain technologies. And because of the cyclical nature of things, that's why I'm saying that maybe just because it's 50,000 years ago doesn't mean that it was, I mean, obviously there's archaeological evidence of a linear history, like linear progression, because like everybody generally believes that this is the peak of human civilization. But the cyclical nature of things is that like whatever evidence existed of the previous cycles, it gets eroded with time to the point where like it is no longer there. Imagine, like, for example, let's say the Mahabharata war took place and everybody died and there was nobody to tell the story. And like it happened so long ago that we have to like dig way, way too deep to even discover the remnants of that era. And obviously at that level, right, it becomes unrecognizable. It becomes like, because the earth's core is like, it melts everything. So there may not be any evidence of a time that was so far away. So that's why maybe it seems like it's a linear progression. But obviously, every cycle starts with a linear progression. You start with 0 and then you go up, and then maybe like you go to 100 and then like you come back. And then by the time you come back to 0, it's like everything of the 100 is lost. So you have to start over again. But anyway, this is like a much like, I think it's like going in a completely different direction, a tangential direction. But it's just something that
Actually,
came to my
not.
mind.
Yeah, actually not, because the human psyche is such, because we take so much pride in the Mauryan Empire and how Ashoka was and his ideas, his idea of Dhamma and everything. But we as a human civilization, as in the Indian civilization, we forgot about Ashoka for the longest period of time. And it was only during the British rule that they interpreted the whole text that were written, and they told us that there was a ruler like Ashoka back in the days, who used to rule over Mauryan Empire, and there was an empire called Mauryan Empire. It was only in 1903 to 1904 when the text of Kautilya was found again and then translated to English for us to understand that there was such a great economist or political philosopher like Kautilya that we had, and we essentially forgot about these great personalities. So maybe we actually were technologically so advanced, and now we don't have that capability, or that information was maybe not passed on properly, so the civilization kind of went back.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is that there are different modalities to achieve a certain level of advanced state. I think the reason why today, like, you know, we have a lot of external capabilities is because, like, that is the direction that we have taken in terms of our progression as a civilization, as a kind of collective human civilization, where people, you know, like we have you know, expended all of our energy into like the external reality. Maybe, you know, these people, whoever were in the Mahabharatas, like they had an internal focus and they developed their abilities as a human being. And maybe at some point of that level of development, you can actually have like powers that seem mystical to us, but are actually possible. So that is the line of thinking that makes me think that could have been possible. That because like today we don't have that level of like sophisticated internal, um, you know, like scientific exploration. I feel like today it's so hard to just like focus within, and if there are people who do that, they cannot exist in our domain because like we are connected to the outside, and they would not be able to, like, you know, interact with us in a meaningful way, because like we would not understand them, first of all, and they would not know how to speak to us, um, and how to speak in our terms. Maybe if they start speaking about it with us, we would just think that they're kind of like, you know, they've lost their minds. um, so there are like intrinsic limitations that we have, and I think that's where, like, you know, I'm trying to have an open mind, that it is possible that we don't have the our limitations are failing us from seeing the feasibility in other ways of you know, advanced human civilization. um yeah. um okay, so moving on to the other things, right? Like, so we already talked about the dating of things. And it's kind of crazy that even with our modern technology or whatever, because of the distance of time that exists, we can't really be sure of anything. And you know, we feel certain invincibility when we think about, like, you know, what we are capable of as a modern human beings. But our technologies will fail if the history that we're looking at is so far behind that all the evidence has eroded with time. So that is something that we already discussed. But there's one more thing that was like a confusing part to me. So I don't know much about Mahabharata's story and all this. I've seen, you know, like when I was a kid, my parents used to watch on Doordarshan. There was this Mahabharata thing, and it was so boring for me. Like my grandma used to be like watching it all the time, and they used to have these. Every time somebody speaks, it'll go to like the heavenly, like it'll show like planets, and then like there'll be some background narrative going on, and I didn't understand any of that. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and it was so boring. But I do remember like little bits here and there about that from there, but I don't know the details of things. But here, when I was reading these pages, like we had this elaboration as to what is the historical context in which this war happened. And see that they talk about like how there was a gambling, and there was a rig it was a rigged, and that's how the Kauravas sort of like beat the Pandavas in the game of dice. And so it starts off saying that they played this game, and then they beat the Pandavas, and then the Pandavas, like, they bet their wife, their collective wife, which was another bizarre thing that was there. And then that's how they lost the thing, and they had to go to the 12 years of exile and all this. And at a later point, it says that, like, you know, they are going out to go begging, and then they are in exile already. And and then that's and then the King Draupadi is like now putting a competition for all the noblemen to come and um you know, like participate in this competition. And then that's when Arjuna like wins Draupadi's hand, and then he comes back home, and then their mother says that, like, share the wife with amongst yourself, share whatever you got amongst yourself, as they got the bhiksha, right, something, right? And that's how they get married. But if you look at the timeline of like when this like dice game happened, that was way before the exile happened, right? And then why would they bet? I mean, how would they be able to bet Draupadi in the game when the event timeline says that, like, no, they only met her up during the exile? So I'm confused about that. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, even I know.
He clarifies in the same book.
Avantika, did you read through more pages, or did you actually? I want to hear what Sandeep had to say. Like, Sandeep, did you have the same confusion?
Yeah, I have the same confusion because they bring the Panchali after getting exiled, and then they go to this, what is it? He goes to that contest, and then he wins Panchali,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But then they
So-
says that they have to exile them
These,
before.
Hold on. Let Sandeep finish. Let him speak.
yes, sir.
So for me, the timeline is they get exiled, and then they go to the forest, and then again as you just mentioned, there is a missing point where she was already married to them, and then it is
Yeah.
she's not supposed to exist
Yeah,
when
exactly. Yeah. The
they
timeline is
did.
confusing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody else had the same confusion. Yeah. So I guess Avantika and Prince, you guys had something to say. Avantika, you can go first.
I was saying that they are talking about the two exile. What we all know and what is popular is this big exile, at the end of which Mahabharata happens. But author has mentioned about one small exile where they were living in some Brahman's ashram and something like that. So it will be maybe we can read further and then discuss that part of what we all understand what the author has mentioned about that other exile.
So you're saying that there are two exiles. The first one happened
So
for some.
what
So the first one happens like before the, I guess, like I mean
the 13 years before this set of 13 years before that also they were living in some ashram. So that is when they went and won Draupadi in the
no,
Swambar.
but again, the thing is that they were supposed to live incognito in the 13th year of the exile.
So
Um,
this is before this 13.
I know you're saying that there was a previous exile, but I don't recall like reading about that. Did you get that from reading the book, or did you know from outside?
No, I just got to know in this book, and they have talked about it in very brief, at least till the point I have read. They've just mentioned that they were living in some Brahman's ashram.
No, but I thought that was the 13th year. But anyway, okay, Prince.
No, not 30. It was even before this 13. I mean, even before
Yeah,
the
I
first.
know. I know what you're saying. I guess I missed it. Yeah, Prince.
No, maybe you need it will come down the line. You wouldn't have reached so far yet in this book.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go by a timeline basis.
Mhm.
So, when the Pandavas and Kauravas were kind of pulling ropes and trying to figure out that who's gonna be the crown prince of the Kuru clan, then Kauravas sent Pandavas to a place called Lakshagra, uh, allegedly a palace which was made out of wax. And then it was set fire, and somehow Pandavas got the news that they are in danger, and they made a tunnel through which they got out. And the whole Kuru clan thought that they are dead. They did not survive the whole fire incident of Lakshagra. So then they went into exile because their mother was kind of scared that if they go back, then some similar kind of conspiracy will happen against their children and then they may die. So they were living in an exile in Brahminical ashrams and places like that. And there, Arjuna went into the whole this Draupadi Swayamvar and stuff like that. And the whole thing happened that you said that her mother said that you can divide it and all. And after this incident, they went back to the Kuru clan, the what was Hastinapur, and they went there to claim their righteous place as the crown princes of the Kuru clan. And then the whole incident happened. They were given a new kingdom to rule named Indraprasth. He came back. The dice incident happened. And then they went into 12 years of exile and then 1 year of secret exile, which they completed in the uh, Asmaka kingdom, commonly known as the Virata king. So that's how the whole thing happened.
Okay. I guess like we do have to have some context of the Mahabharata in a deeper way, I guess.
But Raghav, according to this book, I remember it
Mhm.
is specifically mentioned that the Drupada kingdom, they do that Arjuna wins Draupadi on the 13th year of incognito year. That was exactly mentioned in this book.
Yeah. And also, Sandeep, I remember you said you read to up to 100 pages or something. So you must have.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't think that we have the confusion because I didn't get to that part. Maybe it's because of maybe we missed the detail, or maybe Avantika has like made up her own embellishment in her mind to cover up the thing. I don't know. I don't know what happens. I want to like get to maybe like we need to have a closer reading. But Sandeep, maybe like you can point to maybe like you can maybe like after this call you can share a screenshot of where you saw that it said that this was the 13th year when this happened.
Yeah, because I vividly remember that the father of Draupadi, they didn't know that it was Arjuna, right? It was
Yeah,
a 13th
exactly.
year
Yeah.
of incognito, and they were in incognito mode. Even after winning the context, they didn't know that he was
Yeah,
Arjuna.
yeah.
So the king himself
Okay.
recognized that it something like that, it is something like that.
I was not willing to use this word, but yes, the Drupad king never knew that it was Arjuna because, as I said, they were hiding their identities because their mother was scared that they might get caught into some kind of conspiracy. And the
Okay.
13th year of incognito that they had, they the whole year they were disguised as infidels in the kingdom of Virata, where they were, let's say, serving the kingdom, and the whole year they had nothing to do with any political alliances and things like that. It was only during the end of the 13th year where they had a war with Karna and people like
Okay.
that.
Okay. And I also remember that when they meet Draupadi, that's when they also meet Krishna, right? At what point do they
Yes.
encounter Krishna in this
Yeah,
timeline?
it's the same point, I guess. They
I'm
meet.
not sure because Krishna is technically their first cousin, so I'm not sure.
No,
He is
actually,
technically,
is
yeah,
he?
go ahead, Raga.
No, I didn't know that. I thought they see the way that I read that book, right? Like it was saying that he was the king of the some tribal something over there, and that he Arjuna meets Krishna through the his engagement with the Draupad kingdom, and that's how they first meet. So if he was a first cousin, they must have known already, like from birth or something, right?
Yeah, because the mother of Pandavas was also from Surasen kingdom, which is the kingdom of uh, the the Krishna, alleged king. And I guess they were, if I'm not wrong, they were first cousins.
Yeah, I do remember it. Krishna is his first cousin. It is kind
So
of confusing to me too, but I do remember that this book itself mentions that Krishna is their first cousin, something like that.
yeah, okay. So all right. I guess like there's a lot of these confusions that we have, maybe because of the way things are introduced. It's all like kind of like it gives a summary of things rather than go to it sequentially. So maybe and there have been like various different summaries of the different timelines. So I don't know. The other thing is, so if they meet Krishna at that point after meeting Draupadi, why wouldn't Krishna stop them from doing that loaded dice game that lost them their entire kingdom? Wouldn't they have his counsel? Because like it does say that like when Arjuna meets Krishna for the first time, he becomes a friend and a counsel. So if they are doing something like that, why
See,
wouldn't
this
Krishna interfere?
very story says that he wins the Draupadi and then they go back to claim the kingdom and then they refuse and the war starts. That's how I remember.
Okay, they refuse, like, so they win Draupadi, and then they say, are you, I think Prince
Yeah.
was saying that they get Indraprastha, and then after that, like they go to play the dice game. They go to ask for the kingdom back, and then maybe like
Okay.
they get challenged. I don't know. I'm just I'm just like remembering from whatever I know from
So
elsewhere.
Krishna does go to them and ask, give them 5 villages for 5 of them, but they refuse. The Kauravas refuse.
Mhm.
So I think, if I remember correctly, the Kauravas refused to even give the 5 villages. Even they have like very big kingdom, and they refuse to give 5 villages. So
Mhm.
it is like, it is projected in a way that it is just a test that Kauravas will refuse anyway, and it is
Mhm.
set as a backdrop to justify the war itself. That is what my understanding is.
No, but at what point does the game happen?
So the game happens again. The cyclic is like, that is what I remember, but I'm not sure. They said there are 2 exiles. I don't recall any 2 exiles in my own readings. But again, it is the timeline itself is especially when
So
it comes to Draupadi, it is a cyclic timeline. I'm thinking.
How is it cyclic, man?
I mean,
It's not like
cyclic means she's supposed to be not there, but she is there in the day of the dice. They lost it. So I'm not sure, because they said there are 2 exiles. I don't remember when I
no. I
read this book.
think the
There
other
are
thing is that at that point, like when they play the dice game, right? Before that, they already like try to kill them somehow, and that makes sense with what Prince was saying about the Fax Castle or whatever. But Prince, I think you have something to say. Go ahead.
yeah, you'll never see mention of 2 exiles because one was self-sanctioned. They decided for themselves to exile themselves. I don't know what the exact word for that is, but uh, I would use exile only. And yeah, the whole dice incident happened. They went in after the 13 years of exile, and then there was a lot of again clashes for power and stuff like that. So they were given a kingdom of, I won't even say a kingdom, a territory of Indraprasth to kind of rule autonomously under the flag of the Kuru clan. So Yudhishthir was the king there, and they went to rule. And after, I guess, some time, they came back for, I guess, they were invited for something. And there, the whole dice incident happened, where they eventually lost everything, and then they went back. And after 13 years, when they came back, Krishna came in uh, for as a justification of war to ask for 5 villages, and then the whole thing that Sandeep explained.
Okay. 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 Anyway, so we've reached the end of the 1 hour discussion session. This was a very productive session. So let's discuss like how we're going to conduct the next things moving forward. So I think, I don't know who it was that said that like we need to maybe like ramp up the pace of reading. And I don't know like how you guys feel about like increasing the number of pages per week that we have to read. I was thinking that maybe if we can do 50 pages, right? So this book is, I think, like 500 pages, right? How many pages is this book? 550 something, right? So if we do 50 pages per week, then that is like 3 months we can get done with this. How do you guys feel about that?
You can't get depth of the verses. You can go to the story of the Mahabharata in one session, but verses are not that easy to grasp.
So you're saying we need more time. 50 pages per week is too much, is you're saying?
We should not decide right now.
When will you decide then?
After,
We
after
have to come with some targets.
After
because
what?
after, like, there are verses now, uh, a verse and its corresponding meaning. So
Hmm.
to understand one verse, it may take time,
Okay,
because
let's do one thing.
Uh,
Okay,
it's
Prince, what did you have?
thinking that
I would say for the first this week we can maybe go a bit faster because during the first few verses of chapter 1, It is more or less the introduction that the people are here and who are these people, and they are sounding the conches and stuff like that.
I, I think first chapter is complete the story part only. The second chapter starts with the conversations between Arjun and Krishna. That part may take much time. The first chapter is can be done in one day only.
Raghav, you have to decide, are we going to read part 1 and then discuss about it, or are we skipping part 1?
Okay, let's. I'm sharing the screen right now. I'll tell you like exactly where I actually I was even confused myself about like which pages we were supposed to read. What I read was like the preface, and then this Mahabharata thing, this one, until and this one as well. And then I read the timeline part, and that's it. I have to start from here, okay? Where did you guys stop?
I personally stopped after, I guess, second chapter, because I thought we had to read only two. It was confusion
Which
from
one
my end.
was okay? This you read until here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same. This is what we discussed. I think actually I listed like page 10 to 14, and then I guess like 14, 20 to 26 or
I think
something.
it's better if you can mention the page numbers of the book
I
instead
know. I
of
think I made a mistake.
PDFs.
I was confusing for me. So next we'll start from here. Okay. So if you haven't read until this part, like please read through it after this session, and then from here, if you add like 50 pages, I don't even know what is in here. We have some things here. So I think maybe we'll just like go with chapter 3. And because one thing I do agree with what Ankit pointed out, like we may not have the time to discuss all those things if you're just having 1 hour per week and you have like all those pages to discuss. So the pace of reading is one thing, but also the time that we have to discuss those pages is also another thing. So if you rush through it, maybe we won't have the depth of discussion that we can have. So how do you guys feel about like until page 37? So this is like starting from, I guess, like page 20,
I
22.
think
So
fourth chapter is not the part of Gita, I think.
no, it is not. But we are reading the book. We are trying to like go through the book as it is presented.
I think part 1 is very crucial for understanding part 2, because without this backdrop, I mean, I'm not saying you may not be able to understand, but it gives a lot of context of what actually Mahabharata is and what are all these characters are. So it is very helpful to not to skip part 1.
Yeah, not to skip, but it's like it's like a story. There is nothing deep philosophical rooted in chapter one.
No,
That
not
is
at
not
all.
there.
But I'm presuming that none of us doesn't actually know what is Mahabharata. No one has read what is entirety of Mahabharata. So this part 1 gives a backdrop. If let's say Bhima, of course, if you have a little bit of understanding, there is, Bhima, who is Bhima is, right? But this one, in this part 1, it actually explains every single character. I think it is the 4th or 5th one. Yeah, in one of the chapters, it explains every single character. So I believe you can read it through. If you would like to decide, everyone can read entirety of it, and then you can go into part 2 directly. If that is
What
what.
what you gu- what's your motive of reading Gita? In the sense ki, is it for literature purpose, or to know the core philosophy, or to or for the purpose of self-help, or like how can we live a better life? Like in what
No, I
I
think
context?
don't have.
I'll tell you what the context is like for us, right? For a lot of us, I think we don't have enough of an understanding of it to know what to do with it. So we are starting off just to understand what this is. Okay,
It's
Yeah.
that
for
is
literature
at
purpose,
least
like
that's what I'm coming from. That's where I'm coming from.
okay.
So I think it makes okay. You know what? If this is the part 1 is basically if it's just like essays, it says introductory essays. and it's like 22 until like 71. This makes sense. Like we can read through all of this. Why don't we just like read through this whole thing, and we'll make a note of it. We'll make a note of the things that we want to discuss about this thing. And if it turns out that the list of things that we have, it requires more than 1 hour, maybe we can just like schedule a session where we have 2 hours of discussion. And we can go through all of those things, and unless we read it, we won't know like how much there is to discuss about these things. So let's plan to read from 22 to 71. Okay. Or I would say 77, right? Because this one starts, so 76.
Yeah, it's
22
more
to
like
76.
75 or 76.
Yeah, 75, whatever. So 22 to 75, that those things we'll read, and we'll come back next week, and that way we'll be prepared. After that, if we want to discuss one chapter per week, because like we want to go in depth into that, we want to have like in-depth conversations, maybe we can do one at a time. And there is only like 18 chapters, right? So we can have 18, we can do it in 18 weeks. 18 weeks is like 4 months, 4.5
Hello?
months. Yeah.
I'm saying we can go till 79 because in the first chapter it's the continuation of the story, and from this chapter 2
Sure.
it starts the real conversation between Krishna and
Short
Arjuna.
stories. Yeah, that's like 57 pages. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so we can go to 22 to 79.
2 pages are there, 77 to 79, so it's
Sure.
not much.
Sure. Yeah. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, so till 79, right?
Yeah. I'll add the details in the meetup event. That way everybody can be on the same page, and I'll share the event description in the chat after I close here. Okay. All right. I guess we're good to go, right?
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for joining in. I'm actually really glad that we have this like closed, focused group to discuss this thing. I'm hoping that we stick around and we actually have a journey. And my plan is that like once we get through this, right, I want us to do this on a regular basis, because like a lot of people just don't have the reading habit, and I want to do this at scale. Like let's figure out how to actually scale this up in a way that like we have, like for example, not everybody may be interested in reading a certain book, but if we choose a certain book to read for this month, and maybe we'll have like parallel sessions where like people, different groups can choose different books, and they can have this like weekly meets, and we'll figure out how to do this in a scalable way, so that like we can actually create a movement in India for people to actually read more. Because like a lot of people come in, I mean, even in the debates that we have, right, a lot of people come in with their own like personal they don't have any depth of knowledge. They just like consume knowledge on Instagram shorts and reels and YouTube videos, and then they think they know something. But reading books actually gives you a depth of knowledge that I think we miss as a culture in this country, especially. And another thing is that a lot of if most college kids in the US, right? I mean, I studied in the US, and we have like for per week you have like 300 pages of reading that you have to do for one class. So we have like, let's say you have 4 classes, you are reading like hundreds of pages per week. That is like the norm. And I think we don't have that culture in Indian education system. You just don't have the culture of reading or writing, for that matter. We had to write so much. A lot of our work is actually writing, and that's how you learn. Like when you orchestrate writing, that's how you learn how to communicate with others, how to persuade somebody with your thoughts and ideas. And here I'm shocked to see that like people who go through 4 years of college not having written one single piece of original thought. And nobody's required to write anything of originality. Nobody has the opportunity to exercise original thinking. And so I think that those are things that we have to maybe like cultivate in our society. And maybe like we can start with reading and figure out how to actually do this at scale. So yeah, so I'm really glad that we're doing this, and I'm very excited about like seeing where this goes. So we'll connect back next week. Have a great rest of the weekend. See you guys.
Bye, Raghav.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Great session.
Thank you.